Welcome to Packets and Bolts, podcast about technology, life, philosophy, and everything in between. It is Saturday, May 6th, 2023. This is your host, Muskrat, along with my co-host, Mongoose and Dubstench.
Oh, man, still hungover from Cinco de Mayo.
All right. Bank failures, BRICS, economic crises. What is in store for the United States and the world financial system? Email the show at packetsandbolts@gmail.com, packetsandbolts@gmail.com. Join us on Discord. Follow us on Mastodon, Packets and Bolts at ioc.exchange. All right. How's it going?
Swell.
Cinco de Mayo got you down?
Oh, good to see you guys. It's been, 2 months?
Yes. Just when we thought we were on track for our monthly show.
Yeah, 2023.
We've been hard at work.
Yes.
That is true. That is true. Well, other than Cinco de Mayo and some tequila, today's drink will not have tequila in it, but it's an oldie but a goodie, and with some new ingredients, so we'll see how that goes. Let's take a look at some headlines here. We got some interesting ones.
Some old ones, too.
Should we start with these go back from February and on, but should we try? I was trying to group them, but it was hard because there's so many of them. So we're going to try to trim these down. But there's been several hacks. The TechRepublic.com, Royal ransomware spreads to Linux and VMware ESXi. If anyone has heard about that.
Why do they call it Royal ransomware?
Oh, I don't know why it's that, but it's malware first reported around September 2022, so it's kind of an oldie. The people behind the ransomware were in probably...
Are the king and queen of England? Didn't they just get...
I wouldn't put it past them.
I don't think that's in their wheelhouse.
The coronation, that's what they call it. That was yesterday.
The official, when they became the big cheese.
You guys watch that?
No.
Nope.
No. I do not partake in royal things. Did you?
Royal shenanigans? No.
All right. Well... The people behind the ransomware are probably a subgroup of the infamous Conti threat actor. The subgroup, which is called Conti Team 1, released the Zion ransomware before rebranding it as Royal ransomware. Royal spread so fast because it became the ransomware making the biggest number of victims in November 2022, taking the lead in front of the Lockbit ransomware. So there's a chart here, and whatever. Royal was heading the list. This is from February, so I'm not sure how updated this is. But the reason I wanted to cover it is obviously the Linux and ESXi part of it. So that by itself makes it interesting. But it was in November 2022 by insurance company at Bay as being likely the first ransomware to successfully exploit a Citrix vulnerability. And it gives the CVE 2022-27510 and gain access to devices with Citrix ADC or Citrix Gateway to operate ransomware attacks. The threat actor used the Citrix vulnerability before any public exploit, showing that the ransomware group is amongst the most sophisticated ransomware threat actors. And this also shows you that you shouldn't care if something has been exploited publicly or not.
So it was a 0-day, basically.
I think it was a known vulnerability that hadn't been known to be exploited. So that should not make people feel comfortable.
Yeah, it just takes once.
Yes.
Well, I mean, they identify a vulnerability, maybe through, what do they call it, bug bounties. At some point, somebody's going to exploit it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how is this unique?
Yeah, I'm just saying. Just people sometimes look at that. All right.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, companies that are like, "Whoa, it's not publicly exploitable. Like, we shouldn't do anything about it."
Yes.
That's how you get burned.
That is how you get burned. Other hacking news. This I don't know if I call this a hack, but I like to rip on Tesla. Tesla recalls full self-driving to fix flaws in its behavior. And, of course, it's not full self-driving. It's the furthest thing from it. So they were recalling that because they were being threatened with legal actions.
I saw something recently where it was like a video, and somebody was in a Tesla vehicle, self-driving to a point, like whatever, I mean, they weren't driving, the car was. And they were getting pulled over by the cops, but the car wouldn't pull over because there's no mechanism within Tesla cars, and the cops are like pull over now. And they're like, we don't know what to
I
do.
can't.
Wow.
I'm pulled over as far as I can, man.
Can't they hit the brake and it stops? I don't know.
Yeah, you'd think there's a manual override.
So the car get charged with eluding an officer?
I don't know how that ended
Tesla
up.
will always say the people were lying. That's all they do. Oh, yeah, the car was behaving properly, but the people were driving. All right.
It did what the people told it to do it.
Reuters, more hack news. FBI investigates hack of its own computer network. Well, that's surprising. The FBI is investigating a hack of its computer network in an isolated incident that was now contained, the agency said on Friday. This is from February 17th.
So they're talking about it, saying it's an isolated incident.
It's been
total
contained,
shit show.
Totally contained. U.S. Marshals hit with major hack. Sensitive data compromised. This is February 27th, so that was 10 days after the FBI story. United States Marshals Service says it was hit with a major security breach over a week ago, compromising systems that contain sensitive information. So there you go. It probably was related to the whole FBI thing. Let's see. Oh, they're trying to tell you that the hack did not affect the witness security program. You know what?
Which means it totally did.
I bet you the witness security program is stored on a spreadsheet somewhere. And if they just get to that directory, you've got all the lists of like previous name, new name.
You just got to SSH into it and you're good to go.
All right, more.
I'm sure they have a password on the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
On the spreadsheet.
Excel.
Plain text.
Cybernews.com, sensitive U.S. military emails exposed for 2 weeks in the wild. Mm-hmm. Good to know that our government is on top of shit.
What kind of sensitive information was?
Well, a white hat hacker discovered a U.S. Department of Defense cloud server that was left exposed on the internet for at least 2 weeks before it was taken offline by the government. The known white hat security researcher, Anurag Sen, confirmed the discovery with Cyber News on Tuesday. Sen said he found the open Pentagon server on Saturday, February 18th, while using the Shodan search engine. The Pentagon server, hosted on the Microsoft Azure government cloud, was part of an internal mailbox system containing roughly 3 terabytes of internal military emails, many connected to the U.S. Special Operations Command. Oh my gosh. At first reported by TechCrunch. Sen said it was registered under U.S. DoD Azure emailing server. So that's how I confirmed it belonged to the U.S. DoD.
So when you have something, you bring a server online that's publicly facing, isn't the statistic like it takes only a matter of a couple minutes before people are already trying to penetrate it?
Well, get this. Sen told Cyber News the server was open without any authentication since February 8th, but was not able to confirm one way or another if anyone else had seen the leaked emails. There was no authentication. Anyone knowing the IP address and how to look could have accessed it. That is like
Maybe it was a honeypot.
So an unsecured server just sent out to the internet. Yep. Well, that's cloud migration strategy for you.
Everything in the cloud.
Without worrying about damn the consequences.
It's the latest craze.
That's the age of incompetence. All right. Let's see. Other hacking news. This kind of relates to hacking, but not really. But it does. But it doesn't. All right. So Reason.com. SCOTUS says domestic spying is too secret to be challenged in court.
Wait, what?
Now, is that not an oxymoron? We can't challenge domestic spying in court. It's too secret. So, abusive...
Well, so what do they mean by that? Like, they can't gather enough evidence to make a case because it's too secret?
Or they want to keep
They
it, it's all
can't take
classified.
it to court.
They can't have it exposed in court because they consider it so classified.
Officials shield government abuses from litigation by claiming national security. The Supreme Court declined to weigh in. So they did not decide one way or another. So we just, once again, have everything swept under the rug. And secrets, I guess, override the Constitution.
Lumpy rug.
Well, when they bring these cases to, say it gets to the Supreme Court and it's a super technical topic, I'm sure the court justices have aides that are technical, but Supreme Court justices, for as smart as most of those people are, probably don't know what the fuck they're like looking at.
Well, yeah, maybe, but the fact that you can't even challenge if you're accusing the government of domestically spying on you, that should be able to be seen in court. And, we have a secret court. What is it? I can't remember what it's called, but for like top secret matters, we have that kind of stuff. So, to hide the methods that are being used or something. But, domestic spying should be illegal. And the Patriot Act made some stuff, I would argue that it was constitutional, but some of it was, made okay. But, we should be able to challenge these things somehow, or else how do you get your day in court? I don't know.
Yeah, where's the checks and balances?
If I had a nickel for every time there was a Senate hearing and you had these senators on these committees grilling the people that are subject matter experts in what they're talking about, but the senators don't know what the hell they're looking at.
Right.
They have aides that feed them some notes, and if I had a nickel for the number of times that the people are like, no, like, you're wrong.
Well,
then the senators try to backtrack and not look stupid, but it happens all the time.
But yeah, and sometimes
Don't bullshit me.
Sometimes the tech people are morons too, and they're just pulling the wool over the. But yeah, the senators are out of touch a lot of times. I liked some of the rants they went on with Twitter, and they were like ranting about the wrong service to the Twitter CEO or whatever. It was hilarious. That was before Elon days, but. More hack news, NBCnews.com. Dish Network still reeling from week-old ransomware attack, and that's from February as well. The Dish network provider continued to recover Wednesday from a ransomware attack last week that it said disrupted operations, internet sites, and call centers. It said unspecified data was stolen and was investigating whether that included the personal information of customers. I love it. At what point do we fix security problems?
Never.
I guess.
Too expensive. They can't hire the people. You just buy cyber insurance.
Is that true?
We got Arnold weighing in here. Another hack. I think we're all aware of this. LastPass attack saw employees' home computer hacked. So this is an ongoing theme lately, where people are using home computers that. Well, this threat actor, the threat actor behind a series of compromises of credential management specialist LastPass, attacked a DevOps engineer's home computer to gain access to the organization's decryption keys. It was revealed, and this is from February 20th or
Whoops.
28th. So there we go. So now we're finding all the chinks in the armor. The people are running a home computer. And they are getting malware on their systems, and because they're accessing corporate shit, right?
They probably had corporate passwords stored on their local computer.
Plain text.
In a spreadsheet.
Well, anyways, there's another one of these, and I'm trying to remember which. This was more recent.
There's another hack.
3C was it 3CX? Am I thinking of the right voice people? Who's the voice guy around here? 3CX, does that ring a bell?
No, 3CX.
Is that the VoIP provider? 3CX hack.
What are you talking about?
I could have the company name wrong, but hold on. Yeah. 3CX hack caused by trading software supply chain on a home computer that then they used to access the corporate network.
The 3CX phone system is the software-based private branch exchange phone system developed and marketed by the company 3CX.
Yeah, there we go. That was hacked. So if you didn't see that, they're calling it a double supply chain. But what I love about this is because they were able to infect the 3CX like VoIP client or something, a whole shit ton of computers got the malware installed. Like, people just loaded this thing because they were customers of 3CX or whatever. And so then they had malware directly installed. So they were able to like sign it with their keys and everything. Oh. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean,
Whoops.
I just don't know. There's no end to the hilarity, the comedy of errors that goes into these things. So if you're on the website, bleepingcomputer.com, and this article is from April 20th. Now, the hack had taken place sometime before that, but then the details that were coming out, this is where the fun starts here. So they were using X-Trader software on a personal computer that was infected. And so then they took the guy's computer or gal. I don't know who this was, but then they were able to compromise, inject their malicious code into the company's software, and bada bing, bada bang. They got this nice little diagram here. It looks cool.
So it was a supply chain attack.
A double supply chain, they're calling it.
Wow.
So they got this cool little diagram on the page. If you are, let me put this in the. I don't know if you guys have this link, but it's funny because the diagram is quite hilarious. Let's see here. I'm gonna put this in the general. Here we go.
Yeah, thanks for making that easier, because I'm looking through the news thread and I just see a bunch of dicks.
Yeah, we'll get to those soon. All right, so if you click the diagram, you see the UNC 4736 malicious compromised trading technologies. X-Trader software was in victim, and the 3CX desktop app was then infected. Victim. It was a very, very good diagram. I like it. All right, so I don't know. What are the lessons learned here?
Victim.
Don't get hacked.
I guess you shouldn't be using your personal. So I listened to a story on YouTube about this, and they said you shouldn't. The company policies, need to not allow personal computers to access the network. But that's not enforcing.
What if you have posture enforcement?
That's the thing. Just having a policy doesn't enforce it. You should have something where you can't connect with a personal computer. And that is one of the problems in this case. But if it's not this, it's something else. And I hope people are starting to learn that the weak link seems to be dev.
The DevOps people.
Dev or DevOps.
It's not just the user; it's the DevOps user now.
Yeah,
that's the weakest link. And if you're a DevOps person and you disagree with this,
join us on Discord and weigh in on that.
I would argue that a true DevOps person is going to be pretty good, but not all DevOps people are created equal. So we had a DevOps sysadmin that was on the show a couple of years ago, and he followed best practices and all that. So I'm not going to say all of them out there are bad, but we know that sometimes they just grab a random person, call them a DevOps engineer, and away we go. So it'll be even more fun when AI starts taking over the DevOps, and then ChatGPT will get compromised all over the place. All right.
Your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
All right, Vox.com. Tesla's cameras are reportedly spying on customers, but it's not just a Tesla problem. Yes, Tesla employees are sitting there laughing at people that are doing interesting things on their cameras while they're parked in garages or other things like that. So speaking of low enforcement of policies, it shouldn't be very easy for you to just randomly peruse through your customers' video files. But apparently the people that had access to the system had, unrestricted abilities just to watch these videos.
It sounds like an employee integrity kind of issue.
Yes. Yes.
Well, maybe it's like security administrators that have access to proxy logs, and it's typically illegal if you don't have
a reason,
a job description or a job-related reason to be looking through those logs to look. So if I, for instance, as a network engineer, had access to proxy logs, I wouldn't legally be able to look through them. And that's the thing.
It's like I wouldn't be able to listen to phone calls.
Well, I guess it depends on your job role. You might be looking through those for.
Yeah, if you have a legitimate job-related reason, it's legal, but not just anybody with access. Just because you have access doesn't give you the right to do it.
Well, should you have access if you don't need to?
No, you shouldn't.
Right.
If you have access, you have
that's
a real
good point. But
issue to chase down, not
that's
just I'm
like
bored, I'm just going to look through proxy logs and entertain myself.
Classified materials problem where we seem to have a lot of people with access to classified materials.
Yeah, like Air National Guard people?
Yes. Okay, analytics, something mag.com. I don't know what this website is. Leaked Llama unveils the power of open source for AI. So if you're not, I'm excited about this because it lets people put the ChatGPT type AI on their own personal systems and not have to use some big tech company. And people were running this on low end hardware and getting similar results to GPT v3 at least. and I think outperforming sometimes. So they're gonna start improving this, obviously, because it's been leaked into the wild, and then we don't have to worry about the tech oligarchs controlling all of this.
Keep it local.
All right. I think we're good on the hacking. Let's go into the gaslighting that the media is doing on our political stuff. TheHill.com, anti-vaxxer RFK Jr. files to run for president as Democrat. And of course, they label him anti-vaxxer. So they can't just say RFK Jr. files to run. They have to immediately paint him as an anti-vaxxer. And I've been following RFK Jr. for a while, and he is not an anti-vaxxer. He has called for better safety of our vaccine programs and better oversight. And so I think it's funny that they are already starting to paint him as a kook. And this is what we're going to see as JFK or RFK Jr. rises in the polls, because he's already made it into like the 20s or 30s, I think. And there's not a lot of love for Biden to rerun. So this is going to be interesting.
Well, I think I heard a statistic the other day. It was like 63% of Democrats don't want Joe Biden to get reelected to a second term.
Or to even run. Yeah, they're worried about him. I mean, let's get some other people going here.
Yeah, I mean, the Democratic machine or the Democratic National Committee, they don't want RFK. But, there's the conspiratorial part of me thinks that, okay, like you've swung the pendulum so far left lately under the Biden administration with all the different things that are going on that this might be a ploy to introduce somebody who's a little bit more middle of the road to try to, basically paint the Democratic Party as a more rational, ideology, I guess you could say, and just try to continue to normalize some of the, far left leaning policies. And again, I mean, there's far left and far right, right? But some of the things that they've been pushing, or some of the ways that things have been playing out, could be construed as pretty far left. And now you're going to introduce a candidate that should certainly get elected over Biden because he's senile and he's almost 90 years old. Like, the guy can't have an original thought. I mean, like, how do you support that guy? So, I mean, it just seems, if I were running the Democratic playbook, this is what I would do.
Well, the Democrats definitely don't want RFK Jr. in the mix. I would argue that Biden is the furthest thing from being left-wing that I could think of, but he is an establishment candidate that they're trying to defend. RFK Jr. is pushing for more working-class policies, but they're not talking about that. They're only talking about his quote-unquote anti-vax stance, which he's not anti-vax. So if you pay attention to how the media is going to cover him, they're going to either ignore him or just make up a whole bunch of stuff about what he says. And this will be interesting. They've already tried to say that Marianna Williamson is not a credible running mate. Meanwhile, when they report the Republican primary challengers, they list all these people. Some of them have very low percentage, but they act like RFK Jr. and Marianna Williamson are like just fringe, no support. So they're manufacturing consent, as Chomsky would say.
Well, the Republican primary is going to be interesting because it's going to come down to probably Trump and DeSantis. I think
Is
a few
DeSantis
others.
running officially?
I believe he is.
Did he announce?
That's a good question, but he's been touring around.
Yeah, I know he's.
I mean, his name's certainly out there.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
No, but again, like you introduce a guy like RFK from the Democratic side, who's more moderate compared to Biden, and he's got this, from at least a leftist perspective, a radical, belief that, vaccines need to be investigated more. They think that's preposterous, right? But that's going to appeal to right-leaning independents, so that could be a way to pull more voters to the Democratic Party come the general election. So
Well,
it's interesting how this is all playing out.
Well, they're definitely going to try to try not to get any excitement for the primary challengers, but we'll see how this goes. This is going to be an interesting one, because if the DNC does to them what they did to Bernie and basically just try to bulldoze the campaigns, everyone's going to see that for what it is.
Oh, and did you hear they're not going to have any primary debates, something like that?
That's what they're saying so far, but people are starting to demand it, so I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, they definitely don't want Biden having a debate with one of the primary challengers.
That'd be funny as hell.
Yeah, they're not like Biden. The Biden campaign. I mean, he announced, right? But like there's news stories out there right now saying that Biden is not going to debate in the primaries.
Have to, though. Have to.
You
He
would
can't
think.
think for himself.
That he shouldn't be able to.
Like, I don't,
Put his hat-
if you like Biden, that's fine. But, like, you can't tell me from watching that guy that, like, that he can even think anymore.
Well, then he
I
shouldn't
think
be
he-
able to put his hat in the name in the hat for.
He's
running.
a zombie.
He can think, but he's not. I don't know if he's the quickest wit in the bunch.
Cheese kind of slid off that guy's cracker, I think.
Well, like, I mean, his independent thought boils down to, hey, pal,
That's his go-to.
corn pop.
That's his corn. That's
You
his
listen to
go-to.
me.
We need
pal.
that sound bite. All right. Let's get to the New York Post. I got a vagina tattoo inked on my face. The artist tried to talk me out of it. So if you see this post, you have to scroll down to the third picture, and you can actually see the vagina in all its glory. It is actually a well-detailed tat. I'm not convinced I would want that on my cheek, but there it is.
Does it talk about his state of mind when he got that? Like, why did he do that?
Why not?
I'm not sure.
No, why not? I mean, he's certainly free to go and get a vagina tattooed on his face, but
Yeah,
like
good
there
job
must have
one
been
day.
some reason that prompted him to do that. You don't just go to the tattoo shop and say, I'm just going to randomly pick a vagina to put on my cheek.
Well, I don't know, but he was. I'm not sure. Anyways,
And why on his cheek?
yeah, I don't.
Wouldn't you want to? Thanks, Biden. Wouldn't you? I mean, like a vagina on Biden's cheek might be more realistic because you got the wrinkles. The texture
gosh,
plays
no,
in it. But I
that's
mean,
so
on
All right.
anyway.
Anyways, all right. New York Post .com again. Sperm donor wins custody of child after youngster's 2 Oklahoma moms split. Yep, there you go. I question whether this is a sperm donor because didn't he have sex with her? So we're
It's
getting
organic donation.
Yeah, I guess we're getting more and more of these quote unquote donations where they're just having sex, but I don't know if that's this one or not. I'd have to.
So I can see this paving the road for getting out of like child support and stuff. Be like, I was just donating. Just donation.
I'm assuming there's agreements and
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
it's part of the paperwork. Like, so what prompted the court to give it to the sperm donor father and give the child?
Did he have to?
I mean, he must have threw his hat in the ring.
Did he have to
saying,
adopt him? I don't know how that works. I don't know.
Well, even so, you're a surrogate father, I guess you could say. Like, you typically, in this arrangement, you're walking away from it.
The judge
Who's your
cited
daddy and what does he do?
how the ruling left her shaking, adding, I mean pure terror as a queer person to be erased. The judge cited how Oklahoma's Uniform Parentage Act does not take into account same-sex marriage, KFOR noted. The ruling stated Williams admitted she knew that under Oklahoma law, she needed to adopt the minor child to establish parental rights. But Williams chose not to adopt. Okay, so in order for the non-biological other lesbian mom to have had proper custody, she would have had to adopt. Kind of like with a stepdad.
Yeah.
A stepdad would have to adopt the kid if you wanted full custody.
Non-biological, yeah.
So they chose not to. The reality is that the law provides a legal remedy available to Williams. She knowingly chose not to pursue it. So I agree totally if that's what happened. Yeah, because, it's a pain to go through the adoption process. I mean, that's why they didn't do it. But yeah, you can't just have a non-biological person assume the parent status, man or woman. It doesn't happen that way. So I don't know.
Yeah, but how much more expensive? I mean, if the reason was I didn't want to pursue adoption formally because it cost too much money.
I don't
Well,
know.
the process
So-
was
It's-
difficult.
yeah.
So, I mean, if your partner in that lesbian relationship is already the biological mother, there's not going to be any cost to that to adopt other than just processing fees. And if you can't afford the processing fees, you probably shouldn't be a parent because you can't properly support the kid in the first place.
I'm going to guess they just didn't want to do the pain. It's a pain from what I know. I mean, but like when I've dated women with kids and then the topic comes up, like if we were to get married, would you adopt? I'm like, it's the furthest thing from my head. Like you don't say this, but it's like, why would I adopt the kids? Like they're not my kids. They got a dad. why would I adopt them? It's weird to me. Now, in this case, it's a little different. You're a lesbian couple. You're going to have a kid from a donation. Maybe.
Makes sense.
But she didn't do it. So then that's, I don't know.
Knowingly didn't do it.
Tough tits, I guess. I don't know. But,
Ha!
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm buying that whole, like, oh, it's just a complicated process. Like, I mean, then get organized and just do it.
yeah.
Like, there's mechanisms and there's a process to go through. You just got to know the process and just step by step.
Yeah.
Again,
like,
how
I'm
good,
just
how
skip the
good a
paper.
parent are you going to be if you can't just navigate processes like that?
Navigate processes. Parenting 101.
Well, we
Navigate those
know
processes.
from IT that that people can't follow
You
processes.
got to
so,
have
gotta
processes.
Follow the
gotta-
process.
Gotta have process.
Define it and follow it.
What do we got to do? You should have played that one. You should have played
I
that.
don't see it on here.
Oh, dang. All right. Another New York Post. Average penis length has grown in 30 years. Doctors call it concerning.
It's mutations.
But it's growing. Why is that
The
a concern?
contrails are causing dicks to grow.
Causing bigger dicks to be in the nation.
The average penis length has increased over the past 30 years, a new study has revealed. But experts warn it might not be the ideal reality every man's dream. What are we talking about here? As it turns out, size does matter. They link to another article. I'm not going to go. Gen Z millennials hung up on penis size during sex study. Anyways, we'll read that for another day. Researchers fear the phallic inflation is due to unhealthy habits. What? Like bringing junk food or binging junk food or mostly sedentary or even pollution to make your penis bigger.
So if you exercise less, your dick's going to get bigger. That's what I'm taking from that.
Yeah. Bigger size. Don't get weird pills from the gas station. Get yourself a bag of Doritos and smash that.
Was this funded by like the junk food commercial?
This is sponsored by Frito-Lay.
You know, I was listening to something the other night, and they're like, look at every person who just, like pro athletes, look at people who exercise constantly. I mean, they're typically regarded to be in great health. But, like, do they ever live past, like, their 60s and 70s? The people that live into their 80s, 90s, and 100s are not professional athletes, and they're not typically exerting themselves like crazy on a daily basis.
Well, the professional athletes probably take a lot of drugs, so it's probably going to shorten their life.
Yeah, supposedly.
Like Arnold took a ton of steroids, and he's had multiple bypass surgeries, and, that shit fucks you up after a while.
Take it back!
All right, so these guys are worried about these penises. I don't really know what to tell you here.
very concerned about this.
Obviously, if pollution makes your dick bigger, it's probably not good, but I don't know if maybe we should be...
Does it glow? Do they glow in the dark?
Maybe we should study what's actually causing it and not just freak out about it.
Let's conduct a study at Mickey D's.
They're claiming that it's too fast. So
But your Ronald McDonald's cock is huge.
erect penile length is getting longer from an average of 4.8 inches to 6. I was always told that 6 was the average over the past 29 years.
They've been
I
looking
don't
at this for almost 30 years.
I have no idea.
Wow.
I don't know.
That's focused.
I'm glad that they actually say erect because studies that are either not telling you whether they're measuring flaccid or erect is always weird. You should tell you which one
Well,
you're talking
some
about.
people are growers, not showers.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing. It's irrelevant how big your flaccid penis is because what matters is when it's erect. So why would you even study flaccid size? It's not really, unless it's like so small you can't do anything with it, but that's like a micro penis.
Well,
right?
it's like women not understanding shrinkage.
Sometimes you got a stack of dimes and
Oh, okay. Anyways, so this happened in February that we don't really need to talk about it, but Russia suspends only remaining major nuclear treaty with the U.S. So that was the New START treaty. Sad times. All right, back to penises. World News or Vice.com, which by the way, Vice is going bankrupt, but Vice.com. Yes, this is a dick. Archaeologists may have found the first Roman dildo. Yep. So you should check this article out because this drawing is interesting, and it is tapered. It does have a graduated design.
Yeah, it's got the warhead on it. So I mean, were they well, of course, it's like, so it's erect, right? So I mean, that's what's popping out there.
I don't know
The
if dildos
lipstick-
that can go from soft to erect.
That looks like a club.
Yeah, that might be a baseball bat. Maybe the Romans were just playing baseball.
Are you sure that wasn't like the first Roman like blackjack or something?
Oh wow! Do you see that picture down there? Someone in the forum or whatever pasted this this painting of like a guy holding a penis. I don't know what's going on here. Anyways, all right. So there you go. Ancient dildos.
Do you think the archaeologists played with that when they found it?
Maybe.
They're wearing gloves.
Maybe.
I mean, of course, they sterilized it first.
Are you sure? Because that could, wreck the
You think
integrity.
anything's
of the,
gonna?
Don't you, have
artifact.
to, don't you have to investigate to see how well it works to determine if it's legit?
Looks like that thing has slivers, man. I don't know.
Well, if you spit on it first.
Maybe Roman dildos were far advanced compared to what we have now.
It could be. That's good. That's true. All right. So via time.com, Meta launched a subscription service for Facebook and Instagram. Any Facebook, Instagram people that are here gonna pay for that? Anyone?
Subscribe to what?
I don't know. Meta has a Facebook and Instagram subscription. I don't know what you get. I don't really care to read it either.
Stop it!
It's $11.99 per month, but if you get it through the iOS app, it's $14.99. Why would you pay that much
Wait,
for?
more? You pay more for it?
Because they charge like a big fee, I guess.
So what do you get for this fee?
I don't want to read this. It's the story by itself is dumb enough to make me not want to even know. I don't even want to know what they offer. Increased visibility. Oh, in other words, people will actually see your post. Is this the Twitter garbage thing coming back? Prominence in some area of the platform, like search, comments, recommendation. I don't know. This is an expensive subscription.
Did you hear that Google is starting to incorporate blue check marks for Gmail?
What?
So that's a way to authenticate that emails are legitimate. They're trying to...
What defines legitimate?
Well, they're trying to combat spam. So, for instance, if you get an email from Microsoft on the Gmail platform, it would have a blue check mark.
Micro.soft.
And they do some verification that's going to check all this and make
Apparently,
sure.
yeah, it came out in the news.
See, that
Well, I
kind
don't
of
think Microsoft would ever use a Gmail account, so
That kind of
there's
stuff.
that.
Well,
That kind of stuff could work. Like, that validating an email could be legit. That could be legit. I'm assuming that the company pays to have their blue check mark, right? All right.
No, I think the Google thing is just like free.
Maybe, but I mean, if you charge Microsoft, that's one thing, right? Rather than going direct to you. But all right, Forbes.com, Delta 8 and 9, THC 0 are controlled substances, the DEA says. So I haven't heard an update on this.
Are they done with that yet?
This came out in February, but the DEA was basically going to try to crack down on all these Delta substances. So
Because they're not getting any money out of it.
yeah, basically, yeah. The DEA has some stick up their ass or something. I don't know.
We're not making enough money off crack.
All right, what do we got here? We got Insider.com. Jack Daniel's barrel houses are causing an out-of-control black whiskey fungus in a Tennessee community, enraged residents say.
Enraged residents.
This thing grows on everything. They've been trying to get them to like put filters or something on, and I think their excuse was that it changes the taste or some shit of their.
So why did this just start happening? Like whiskey's been around for a while.
I think they haven't been putting the proper crap on this facility or these facilities. So here, if you don't have the link, I will put it in the. Yeah, it's everything. It's growing on everything, so they like wash it off, or
Holy shit.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
Don't they have a special blend called whiskey fungus?
Yeah, you mean like bottled? All right.
Called Black Barrel.
AP News 4-day work week trial, shorter hours, happier employees. So I'm hoping this catches on everywhere. We should by now have a 4-day work week. They trialed it at some companies and they saw that productivity gained. Employees were happier. They probably complained about pay less, but I'm not sure if that's in there. But yeah, if we had Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, man, I mean,
That'd be awesome.
That's what we should by now. It was theorized in the 60s that by now we'd be down to like a 3-day week or something, but obviously that hasn't happened.
Yeah, so in the 80s, we thought we'd have flying cars by now, too.
Yeah.
Cars don't even pull over for the cops anymore.
That's true. That's true. All right. RollingStone.com. Pack of feral hogs sniffed out a cocaine stash in Italy. This sounds like the sequel to
Cocaine Hog.
Bear. Yes. 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 Animals destroyed stockpile of drugs buried in Tuscan forest worth approximately $22,000. So do they eat it? They must be like.
Or they
did
just
they
chew it
die?
up and throw it all over the ground, so you couldn't really use it.
Did they die? I mean, geez.
Well, somebody had a bad day.
Yeah. Well.
Well, Mother Nature, she's got all sorts of animals that are like nature's garbage disposal.
That's true. That's true.
Nature's junkies.
It's interesting, by the way. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about an incident a few years ago where the Zoroastrians, they have this sacred site where they would just leave their dead in this, I forget what it was called, but then the vultures would pick the bones clean. And they did that because they had a belief that the decomposing process was the work of an evil demon, and that the vultures were actually picking the bones clean, and that prevented the demon from taking hold of the dead. But what happened is they started leaving bodies there. All of a sudden, somebody goes and takes a look, and all these bodies are just bloated, and there's no vultures in sight. They start to do an investigation, and they realize that the vultures were dying in like huge droves, and they were sick. And India had where the sacred site is, like all the vultures were dying, and in Pakistan they were starting to die. And they eventually found out, long story short, that they had introduced a bovine painkiller that's an NSAID. And by injecting the cows in order to keep them pain-free when they got to older age, when the livestock would die, the vultures would eat that, and the NSAID would cause kidney failure in the vultures and cause mass extinction of the vultures. So they were able to go and identify a different type of painkiller, remove the old one from the market, and start the process of rebuilding the vulture population. And it's still not rebuilt, but at least they stopped the extinction.
Interesting.
Because without vultures, I mean, how many animals can just eat diseased and dying carcasses and prosper,
Yeah, don't the vultures still gather at the anniversary of, what was the Pennsylvania Civil War, Gettysburg? Don't they still gather there in anticipation of massive amounts of death?
Oh, I don't know.
They did that for years after
Wait,
Gettysburg.
There's a Civil War thing you don't know?
Yeah, I didn't know they had vultures in Pennsylvania, but maybe, yeah.
Or whatever, buzzards,
Son of a
whatever.
bitch.
Whatever the hell our carrion birds are.
What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Loudwire.com. Alex Jones claims artists required to pledge to Lucifer upon signing record deals. I don't know how he got this.
The dude's a maniac.
Yeah. So the idea of selling one's soul to the devil has been part of music industry folklore for a long time. But according to conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, it's not so far-fetched. He recently claimed that musicians and actors have to reject Jesus and pledge to Lucifer upon signing record deals. And REM co-founder Mike Millis jokingly confirmed it. So what does it mean, jokingly confirmed it?
Like, I would say it's probably sarcastic. Like, yeah, dude, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, it
we
seems like
sold our souls.
So Jones discussed the matter during a segment on his His Glory biblical news channel.
He's still allowed to be on the air.
Clip was uploaded to Twitter. This was from February, so I don't know. Yeah, he still does stuff. I don't know what, but so I'm trying to figure out, do they have the REM? Okay. Millis, who co-founded REM and played bass for the band from its formation in 1980 until its dissolution in 2011, I didn't know they dissolved, shared the video of Jones telling the story on his own tweet, writing, "Can confirm." Based on the humorous replies, it's clear that he was making a joke.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. So, all right. Anyways.
But I don't know. I met a guy who was training to be a reverend for some like really radical Christian sect like locally years ago, and he told me that the band Styx was notorious for dancing around pentagrams at their concerts, and so I mean, yeah.
Well, if anybody's been to a Styx concert and can confirm that, please.
Well, I just got a pamphlet. We were on Main Street at a local festival recently, and someone handed a pamphlet out to us, and it said that one of the ways the devil tricks you is by having you call monkeys daddy. So
Oh boy, I fell for that
it showed
hard.
it showed it.
What the hell?
It showed a teacher pointing to a picture of a monkey, and it said daddy. And I think they were like talking about evolution is what they were trying to imply.
Well, that's a
But what
weird
I
way to
took
go
from
about
it
that.
is I won't call monkeys daddy, and I should be safe. So I'm gonna.
That's going to be a hard habit.
Yeah,
to
I'm
break,
gonna have to do some life changes and really reflect on my
especially the herpes monkeys.
my habits.
Yes, we
I'll
should
get
check
there.
on those. WashingtonPost.com. Mexico's president claimed he had photo proof of a mythical elf. Did you guys see the story?
No,
And of course, the question is why. So he went on this thing and he talked about seeing an elf.
Keebler elf.
Keebler
right?
elf, yeah, the cookies.
He claims he saw an elf. I don't really know
Striped fudge.
what's going on here. Why was he tweeting this? People were asking. Everything is mystical. Wrote on Twitter. Lopez wrote on Twitter over the weekend with a picture of a veiled creature with glowing eyes perched in a tree. He said it was a luxe, a mischievous being in Maya lore. Ooh. So there you go. I mean, maybe, but
That's awesome.
I'd have to see the picture of this thing. Did it look CGI'd or? Oh, yeah, okay, right here. You guys got this link? Let's see. So, I mean, maybe it's a creature. You know, I don't know.
I don't know where you're sharing these.
On Discord.
Yeah, Discord, dude. Get with it.
Oh,
Yeah, look at that. That is pretty creepy. I mean, it could be anything, but it could be. It could be. All right. So then the other one next to it is a stone relief that looks like a Keebler elf. Do you think they stole the Keebler elf from that?
I'll bet you Keebler had to give their soul up to the devil
Probably.
to sell those delicious striped fudge cookies.
All right. APnews.com. What time is it on the moon? Europe is pushing for lunar time zone. Okay.
Well,
I guess.
yeah.
How
Well,
many-
hold on. If we're so concerned about what time it is, that only really matters if there's people there hanging out.
I don't know. All right. TheStreet.com. Mark Zuckerberg quietly buries the metaverse. And this is March 18th. So if we didn't know this, the metaverse might be going bye-bye. Maybe it's already dead. I don't know. But I was just hearing some people talk about how the metaverse was the future, and I'm thinking not.
Well, I haven't heard anything about that on MySpace, so.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Should ask Tom about that. All right. WTRF.com. Environmentalist, and I think most people have already heard this story. Aaron Brockovich named an Ohio law enforcement report on special interest terrorism threat in East Palestine. So they named her like a potential terrorist
How?
because she was there trying to help them in their pollution problems, and apparently she's a threat to the establishment. So that is the state of our world.
yeah. I don't know how you can be a bigger terrorist than the fucking railroad company.
I know. I know. I love it. All right. You know that McConnell was treated for concussion after suffering fall at a D.C. hotel. That was in March. CNN.com says. I'm surprised that guy. Speak about ancient politicians. Jeez, we're ruled by like crypt keepers. You know, like the top leadership of the Republicans and Democrats are all like 20,000 years old, and then you got Biden.
He's getting right up there.
Yeah, Trump's old. They're all old. What's going on with this? Where's all the young people?
Well, and we need to probably do a podcast on this, but there is a scientist, he's been on podcasts, like they've found a way to reverse the aging process now. It's true. They did it with certain organs in mice, and they say that what they know about it, they can potentially reverse the aging process completely in people.
Oh, no.
So that you can reset it, and you can take an old person and reset the body to where it can operate and essentially reverse the aging.
So,
no.
the movie Benjamin Button is going to be fact, not fiction.
Well, so I mean, they're knocking on the door of immortality, and I mean, they talk about it, potentially, that we have a overpopulation problem on Earth. So do you think that with all this rhetoric about overpopulation, that they're ever going to let an anti-aging remedy come about? No, but you know that if the mainstream science community has all of a sudden started finding this, that the elitists,
they're
and the
going to be
wealthy
taking it.
and the top, government
They've already had
officials
this.
are probably already doing this.
Well, maybe they'll allow it if you agree, like sterilization.
I don't think they'll ever let anyone know they've solved that problem. They'll just have the super powerful taking it. So if we didn't already know that the intelligence agencies and police stations, or whatever you call it, law enforcement, can intercept our cell phone traffic with rogue cell towers and stuff. The Register.com reports that the Secret Service and ICE break the law over and over with fake cell tower spying. So they've been indiscriminately just grabbing, even if you're not the subject of their search, they will just go through all this crap. IMS eye catchers, etc., Stingray. So this stuff's happening over and over. Blatant disregard for the law. Just stealing everyone's data as much as they can.
Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
It's true.
All right.
Yeah, so that scientist, his name is David Sinclair. And I just put a link to a Time article
Yes, I
about
see.
that.
Oh, boy.
Wow, we are jazzing up the Discord here.
Yeah, he's been on Joe Rogan. He was on another big podcast talking about this stuff, and he's a pretty down-to-earth guy. And in fact, he's really interesting, too, because he's on a very strict dietary regimen, but also supplement regimen that, he's like, I don't do anything unless I believe in the studies that have been done on it, and it's been tested in animals. And he's like, but this is my regimen. But he's been spearheading as part of Harvard Medical School this research, and they believe that they found the key to reverse aging and completely reverse it.
All right. Well, that's probably not good. All right. Well, there's lots of stories that we're not getting to here. Gangs in LA County Sheriff Department. The actual cops are running gang squads, basically. That's interesting. We'll talk about that after the break. All the escalations in the Ukraine war. Silicon Valley Bank failure. Just so we're aware, this came out. Axios.com. SVB employees blame remote work for bank failure. Of course, it wasn't the mismanagement of the company. It's just
They'll do anything. They got to go back to the office.
It's not happening.
Former Wells Fargo executive to plead guilty in sham account scandal. Yep. Good thing that those big banks can be trusted, right?
Yeah, they're totally above table.
Let's see here. Jack White says Metallica buying a vinyl pressing plant is outstanding. That's good.
No.
Wisconsin residents spent estimated millions of dollars buying weed in Illinois last year, and that's what Wisconsin's missing out on, all those tax dollars, all that revenue to other states.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And Illinois above all.
There's good evidence that Ebola leaked from a lab.
I thought that was common knowledge.
See, Illinois has got better weed. They got better sports teams.
No, they have legal weed.
Okay.
And that's it.
All right. Well, I unless I'm missing something here, Mongoose or Dubstench, the Republic.
Whoa.
Knock.
this was already known to most people. I want to cover this before we go on theguardian.com. Republicans tried to delay the release of U.S. hostages to sabotage Carter ex-aid claims. So this was already widely known. But this officially came out that they basically committed treason to torpedo the Carter campaign during the Iranian hostage crisis.
Some light treason.
That's similar to what happened with Nixon and
Watergate.
And when Lyndon Johnson wasn't running a second term, and it was Hubert Humphrey, I think, and Nixon interrupted. He sent a emissary to talk to the Vietnamese and make sure that South Vietnam did not negotiate properly with the North at that conference, and then to try to make it easier for them to win so that they could negotiate afterwards. Of course, Nixon escalated the war after that, so didn't work out too well for South Vietnam there, but two known treasonous attacks.
Aren't we going to talk about vaginal steaming?
Is that on there? Which link? Go for it.
Tell us what you know.
It's a health line. I don't know why you put this on.
There it is. I see it. Healthline.com. Yeah.
Healthline. There's no timestamp on this. So, updated March 17th, 2023. So this is a lesson to the ladies and the birthing persons, I guess. Your vagina doesn't require steaming to detox itself, but vaginal steaming may help you relax and ease cramping.
There's no research that it helps any specific health condition. So that's what it's.
Why did you put this on here?
Well, I think just the fact that it's vaginal steaming, but I love how the last sentence in that paragraph says there's no research that it helps any specific health problem.
It's just relaxing.
Yep. All right.
Like jazz.
It says there's no scientific research to prove whether vaginal steaming is safe.
Oh, so there's no research done.
Wow.
But your vagina isn't meant to be steam cleaned.
Says who?
Vaginal steaming may disrupt the natural pH produced by the vaginal microbiome.
Well, without a proper study,
Therefore, providing an ideal environment for bacteria that cause vaginal infections to thrive. So it's the bottom line. I love that. The bottom line is that you don't need to do this, and it's probably a bad idea. Although it sounds very clean.
Oh, I forgot to cover the weed.
It sounds like it would feel fantastic too.
We'll to get Clara Grace to go and test it out. So this is a tribe in northern Wisconsin is pursuing retail cannabis. I always wondered why the tribes didn't start selling this. They're a sovereign nation. So
would they be allowed to then?
It's on their land. They should be able to, yeah.
They should
if it's on their actual
legalize
reservation.
all drugs.
And the other thing is that we really need to talk about real quick, The Guardian. Florida principal resigns after parents decry Michelangelo's David as pornography.
Oh, my God.
They went insane when some kids, I don't know what grade was this, saw the statue.
Which has been around for how many hundreds of years?
It's insane. This is what we've come to.
Well, as long as... Never mind. I told myself I wouldn't get political like that today.
You did say that.
New York Post, California Police Union Executive Director ran fentanyl operation from home. So there we go.
Working from home.
And now we know this, they're working from home. And, I forgot. Oh, geez, there's too many stories, guys. This is what happens when we're not here for 2 months. All right, Ars Technica. Man beats machine at Go in human victory over AI. And the long and the short of it is he was basically not a master of Go. He used some asinine strategy that the machine didn't have any ability to comprehend, I guess. And so he beat it.
Don't you remember that episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where Data plays that
chess or something with a...
it's like a chess type game, and Data couldn't beat the guy. And Data had this big crisis, like, I'm an android, I should be able to beat this guy. But then Data ended up winning at the end, because instead of playing to win, he played to not lose. So maybe that's what happened here.
That is deep shit right there.
The tactics that put a human back on top on the Go board were suggested by a computer program that had probed the AI systems looking for weaknesses.
Whoa. So the human one with AI assistance.
The suggested plan was then ruthlessly delivered by Perrin, I don't know what that is. It has not been... it was surprisingly easy for us to exploit the system. So the software played more than 1 million games against Go or whatever, one of the top Go playing systems, to find a blind spot that a human player could take advantage of. The winning strategy revealed by the software is not completely trivial, but it's not super difficult for a human to learn and could be used by an intermediate level player to beat the machine. He also used the method to win against another top Go system, Leela Go. I don't know, whatever. Leah Zero, whatever. I don't really care about any of this stuff, but I thought it was funny.
But it's important because once the machines take over, in Judgment Day, and John Connor is leading the resistance. Come on, this is your cue, man.
I'll be back.
Thank you. We're gonna need people like that can think like a machine in order to find those. Okay.
Gotcha.
Well, okay, so if that was considered a victory for humans, how about this one? Euronews.com. Man ends his life after an AI chatbot encouraged him to sacrifice himself to stop climate change. Which, spoiler alert, it will not stop climate change. Just so you're aware. Don't listen. That's how dumb computers are. Ah, shit. Here's another one. Reuters.com. Putin gives U.S. actor Seagal top state award for humanitarian work.
Sweet.
Steven Seagal
Awesome.
at it again. And bleepingcomputer.com, GitHub rotates its exposed private SSH key because it was leaked in the GitHub repo by accident. I love this stuff.
All right, this is ridiculous. So last story, aren't we going to talk about the attack on the Kremlin?
Well, yeah, but we're also going to make that next segment, right? Or do we want to cover it now? We can do it now.
No, you're the boss.
Well, I mean, does that go with the world melting down, or do we want to cover it now?
That's right. Every main topic we have is about the world going to shit. We might as well save it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Well, there's some hope here. ASU.edu, removing forever chemicals from drinking water. They found a new way to make the PFAS biodegradable using some sort of combination with an existing filter and some sort of hydrogen thingamajig that breaks the fluorine bond, I believe.
Wait, so it removes fluoride from the drinking water?
No, it removes the fluorine ion or whatever from the PFAS.
Because it's the fluoride that's killing us.
That's what makes the PFAS so hard to break. And if they can get rid of that, it makes it so bacteria can make it harmless easily. So there's some catalyst that they're using, and it's combining an MCIR and a membrane crystal catalyst film reactor instead of bacteria. And then it's got a palladium-based nanoparticle catalyst, and bada bing, bada boom, your PFAS is easier to break down. All right.
And Bob's your uncle.
Oh, we can't go without this one. New York Post, woman has loud and full body orgasm during
yes.
LA Philharmonic concert.
Did she harmonize with them, though?
Yeah, that's the question. So do you think there's going to be a bunch of women going to the concert now, or
That is a good marketing strategy.
everyone kind of turned to see what was happening?
Well, of course.
Yeah, when I first read this story, I thought that she's just one of those people that has just random uncontrolled orgasms. Like, there's people out there,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But no, she had a partner with her.
Yeah, and so then what?
So the guy diddled her,
You think so?
and she couldn't keep it down. So it
I don't think
like,
he was diddling her, was he?
Well,
it was
either that
the
or he was banging her.
It was the sound. The sound made her.
No, he was off getting popcorn.
he was there and diddling her. I read the story.
Okay, then.
Because when she started screaming in pleasure, whatever, and everybody turned to look, he was sitting there and he just smiled at her with his hand down her pants, probably. I don't know.
Oh, all right. No, okay. Well,
All right.
I guess lesson learned there is make sure you're a little quieter coming.
Did the orchestra stop?
I would hope not. I know people turned to see it. I don't think they stopped. That would be pretty amateurish if they stopped playing.
Rookies.
No, just so did you say what song it was?
No.
It was Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So I mean, all you women out there, go and play that right now
and get diddled.
during our break.
And get diddled.
See how that works for you.
Time.com, Florida couples, Amazon order includes 65 pounds of marijuana.
Sweet.
I couldn't not
Well, you
read
get that
that
on
one.
Amazon?
I couldn't not read that one. All right.
To the subtitle. They just wanted some plastic bins.
Filled with weed. All right, so I guess we'll talk about the drone strike after the break, or
Sure.
all right. Well, this is
Mix it in there.
this is Saturday, May 6th, 2023. Those are the headlines. Yeah, I guess we're gonna take a quick break, and then word from a sponsor. Come back from some listener emails and a cocktail, and we'll get into the topic.
We have a sponsor?
We'll be right back.
Got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. In the sun.
Hank Carlson here, proprietor of Baked Beans and Books and Furries Wear Boots. Did you ever wonder how many bites it would take to get to the bottom of a giant vat of baked beans? Well, I tried it once, but all the beans kept collapsing in on the hole I was making. I ate the whole vat. Stop on down to Baked Beans and Books to get yourself a heaping handful of baked beans and peruse the selection of books. While you're at it, stop at Furries Wear Boots. 11111 State Street, Madison, Wisconsin. Baked Beans and Books. When books just aren't enough.
I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun.
All right, we're back.
In the sun.
All right. It is Saturday, what is it, May 6th? Is that the date? Yeah. May 6th, 2023. Packets and Bolts. Email the show, packetsandbolts@gmail.com. Packetsandbolts@gmail.com. Find us on Discord or Mastodon.
Are we still doing the OnlyFans thing?
OnlyFans. I was on OnlyFans the other day on our channel, the Packets and Bolts channel. And
we have an OnlyFans channel?
Yep. All right.
Sweet.
Ooh.
Smooth.
All right, we're going to make a drink. And then we're going to read some emails. And then we're going to talk about the possible destruction of the world and all the other stuff that's happening. Okay, so I'm going to relocate to the drinking station.
Man, whoever wrote this song.
Sent by a listener. All right.
It's so good.
There's another one we're going to try to do with his channel on YouTube, I think, but I have to grab it. All right, I'm going to go relocate over to the drinking station. It's going to be a repeat of the Manhattan that we've had before, but this time we are going to use a, what is that brand of sweet vermouth? What is it? Toshi something or
Tushy.
Taki?
No tea.
All right. Well, I don't know what it is, but we'll talk about it.
Delicious, that's what it is.
It's unique. I've never had it before, and it supposedly goes good with Manhattans. So the Manhattan recipe, 2-to-1, bourbon or rye. I like rye. 2 parts bourbon or rye to 1 part sweet vermouth, and then make sure you get those agnosta bitters. And then you stir that up, and you pour it in your glass, and then your gullet.
Stir, not shake.
You know, the thing
Stir
that
only,
people
yes.
got to understand is that, you know, when you're as seasoned podcasters like us who are mixing drinks and drinking all the time, that we at Packets and Bolts bring the scientific method to mixing drinks. And now we're to the point that we've mastered this craft that we have to start experimenting with better types of liquor, the components of the drink.
Well, our listeners demand high quality, and that's what we provide.
Yes, we need a dedicated drink mic. So if you'd like to donate to our cause,
We prefer it looks like the microphone that what's his name used on The Price is Right, like the little.
price is wrong, Bob.
So I'm using Knob Creek Rye. One of my favorites.
Knob Creek Rye.
If you want to get your knob polished, then
Get your knob polished.
Might as well, 'cause they're all getting bigger.
All right, so that's my rye. Let's get the agonasta in there.
I got the bitters.
I like mine a little extra bittery.
You hear the bitters.
We do need the microphone.
Yeah, we do need a Bob Barker microphone. I bet you, when did we get those?
There's the
This is
vermouth.
Kochi is what I said. Oh, that's right.
Historical.
I don't know.
Vermouth di Torino.
We're still working on our Italian, folks.
And remember, once you open your bitters, your vermouth, sweet or dry, you should refrigerate it for longest lasting pleasure.
Or it will expire.
It won't kill you, but it won't taste good. Generously stirred. The number of times stirred should be proportionate to the depth of the brew.
So how many times have you stirred it?
It must be over 20. Raise your spoon up and down as you stir.
The podcats are loving this. You see the podcats?
Yes, they were paying attention.
Oh my god. It was almost a Hindenburg disaster.
Aren't you supposed to empty the ice first?
If we were doing it clean.
Oh,
I
this
am
is
keeping it
a
on the
dirty,
boxes.
Yeah, we'd be dirty up in here. Thank you,
a
sir.
dirty Manhattan.
I feel like I was on location.
I'm on location.
Thank you, senor.
Oh my gosh. All right.
Careful.
I'm careful.
Hold on.
I have a feeling that there's going to be some sound cleanup to do from from that segment.
Nope. Got it.
All right. Okay. Salute.
Salute. It's wickedly smooth.
That vermouth is more complicated than the traditional Dolan, which I like to use. This has
Doesn't really taste like.
a rustic character, like a
It's still so smooth.
If you didn't tell me vermouth was in it, I wouldn't have known.
It's like an
Say that.
experienced weatherman is rocking me to sleep.
What? Well, I've never been rocked to sleep by an experienced or inexperienced weatherman, so
Weatherman ASMR.
I have no point of reference for this.
It's the El Nino.
All right. Well, let's stop creeping everybody out and nice.
All right. Okay, we're gonna keep this music rolling while we do the emails. I've only got a couple. It's weird. I look back at last because I used to discard all the emails, but now I'm saving them. So I have a reference point, and the stuff from last show was interesting. Talking about the military area denial technology and all that stuff. But we're going on to new emails. Okay, so the only two I grabbed it because I didn't want to take the time to look through the backlog because it's been 2 months.
Your emails got deleted.
No, they're sitting there, and if I find some good ones, we'll add them to next show. All right, Tom. Tom writes, "Why are you not talking about the banks? They are destroying the country." And yes, we are talking about the banks. And
Funny you should mention that.
We listened to you, Tom.
this was from around the time of the SVB, I believe. So since that time, there's been several more. All right, and Junk writes, that's right.
Is that
signed
junk with a K?
Yes, signed Junk. Did you ever wonder why you can't find 100% underwear?
What?
Is that a problem that everyone has experienced?
100% underwear? Or somebody's stomping on underwear and it's only like 80 or 70%? What's going on?
I don't know. Is there 100%? I guess the elastic takes away
100% what?
cotton.
Oh,
Did
you
you-
didn't
did
say
I not
cotton.
say
You said
100%?
100%
Yeah, you just said 100%
underwear.
underwear.
Oops, sorry. Did you ever wonder why you can't find 100% cotton underwear? Cotton is the key, sir.
Yeah, that offers a whole different.
Well,
puts a whole
here's
different paint job on
here's the
things.
prevailing theory. If you have 100% cotton underwear, it would shrink and it would constrict and suffocate your balls.
And with today's growing dicks, we need those, the
The
overhead.
expansion that we can get.
Yes.
That's right.
might be
The
it.
underwear companies knew about the enlargement of the dicks.
Oh my God, do you think they're in on that? Do you think we just kind of stumbled on
the new conspiracy?
Yeah,
That's right.
maybe there's something to that.
All right.
Email us. Tell us what you think.
Email us show packetsandbolts@gmail.com. Packetsandbolts@gmail.com.
Well, I don't know. This music, I'm too laid back for this subject.
You want to listen to the Harry Lake song again to jazz you up?
All right. We do aim to be the AM radio of podcasting. All right.
Without the static.
Without the
Amplitude
static.
modulation.
That's right. AM radio of podcasting. What was it? Since 2019? Is that how long we've been doing this now? Jeez.
Yeah.
Before COVID.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I remember 2019. Those the days.
Back in the old days. Then the world
I sat
changed.
next to you and told you to check the network all the time.
All right.
And I always said the network was good.
You said the network was
And it
stable.
was 60% of the time.
Stable. You said it was stable. I think I took that post-it note home too. That said this network is stable.
There's a poster.
That was a post-it note I had on my
Oh,
queue.
we should make Packets and Bolts posters. The network is stable. Yeah. All right.
Is that our new slogan?
Yeah.
That's a good one, huh?
All right. Well, tonight we're looking at lots of fun stuff. We're looking at bank failures, BRICS, which is an acronym, by the way.
What is the acronym?
Economic crises. So BRICS is a collection of countries: Brazil, Russia, I believe India, China, and
South Africa.
South Africa. There we go. All right. And I think that's basically attempting to fight the U.S. hegemony. Is that what's the point of the BRICS?
Well, a lot of it stems from the fact that the SWIFT banks, which are the source of the sanctions, and the U.S. throwing
yes.
around their might and sanctioning these countries
For
that
Mongoose, for the listeners, can you explain the SWIFT system? Because it's basically like a international way to transfer funds, right?
Yeah, so SWIFT stands for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications System.
Ooh, fancy.
And approximately 42 million SWIFT transactions happen daily, and most of them happen in U.S. dollars. And because most of the global economy is based on the U.S. dollar via the fiat currency system, of course, back in, I believe it was 1971. I'd have to check that date, but essentially that's when the U.S. severed its ties from the gold standard. And essentially now our central banks, like the Federal Reserve, which is the common one for the United States,
but not just the United States.
you know, I mean, we basically, you know, because of this reliance in the, you know, the U.S. dollar being the standard for currency across the globe, that we're able to wield this power and institute sanctions among countries. And of course, given, you know, the political, you know, odds we're at with countries like China and Russia, they're basically finding alternatives, right? So that's
Yes.
where BRICS came about. It's essentially an opponent to, or an alternative to, the G7, right? So the G7, formerly the G8, which is the big powerhouse coalition of economic countries. Russia was originally part of the G8. They got kicked out following the 2014 Russian annexation of Crimea in Ukraine. And China, even though it has such a massive economy, they never received an invitation to join the G7.
Oh, I fancy that.
So we've essentially ostracized them, or, you know, kept them out of basically, these larger economic conversations, and they're fed up. So they started BRICS.
Yeah, and you mentioned the big one that you mentioned when you were introducing this, the SWIFT being used to basically enforce sanctions.
Yes, and
that's
not to be confused with Taylor Swift.
Yes. No, she can enforce sanctions too.
She wields immense power. Let's.
Yes.
And she took an oath to Lucifer, of course,
Yes, of course.
that we found out earlier. But
Yes.
Confirmed by REM.
So they use the SWIFT system to enforce the sanctions, because if all your transactions have to go through it, and they have control of it, right? And that's kind of the crux of the matter here.
yeah, so I mean, the whole BRICS conversation started to pick up steam, after we kept, imposing more and more sanctions on Russia after their invasion of Ukraine. When did that happen? 2 years ago now? 2021?
Oh wow, was it?
Or was it last year?
Or was it 2022?
No, it's about we're a bit over
year,
a year and a few months into it, yeah. But essentially, with all the sanctions, Russia has been finding new buyers for their oil. Mm-hmm. So that's where South Africa, I think, comes into the equation, because they're a big buyer. But also, of course, India and China. So I mean, that's kind of how some of these other countries entered into the BRICS. In fact. In 2021, about 24% of the total world GDP is attributed to the BRICS countries.
Holy, how much?
24%.
Wow. All right, it's growing.
So G7, by contrast, in that same year, accounted for about 45% of the total world GDP.
No. All right.
So this is not a force to be taken lightly.
Sure.
Okay, and so maybe they're trading amongst themselves, and they're looking for alternatives beyond the U.S. dollar, and perhaps, through the course of this conversation, we'll start to realize why that's a big deal.
Yeah, this also kind of rolls up with the petrodollar, right? Because the fact that Saudi Arabia and other countries would always trade oil in dollars, that was kind of the deal that was made. And now, starting with these sanctions on Russia, people are starting to buy dollars direct in rubles, or, I think China now is using yuan to do things, and so we're seeing the potential cracks forming in the dollar hegemony.
Exactly, and I found an interesting write-up on through the U.S. Gold Bureau talking about BRICS, and they talk about how the dollar remains strong due to petrodollar recycling. And the petrodollar system is the agreement between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia to keep the oil trade in dollars. So 80% of international oil trade happens in U.S. dollars. Petrodollar recycling happens after dollar-based oil transactions, and the dollars get recycled into foreign investments and infrastructure. If petrodollar recycling ends and trillions of dollars return stateside, there will be an unimaginable inflationary event. So as far as Saudi Arabia, they're now actively negotiating with China to accept the Chinese yuan for oil. And the second pillar of the Saudi Arabia 2030 plan, so there's a plan out there, is to grow and diversify its economy. China is Saudi Arabia's largest customer and buys almost 2 million barrels per day of Saudi oil. Before Saudi Arabia could move the oil trade away from dollars to yuan, it would probably happen slowly, because Saudi Arabia still has significant dollar-based investments. Saudi Arabia will move away from the dollar slowly.
That doesn't spell good news for us long term.
No, and a Chinese Communist Party newspaper said if they can achieve that goal and push back against the dollar's hegemony, other developing nations will also join them when it comes to developing alternative financial infrastructure in response to reckless U.S. sanctions.
Now, what's the U.S. going to do about all this? This don't sound good.
That's a good question. I mean, it's not all just about BRICS either. It's about the declining confidence in the U.S. dollar, and a lot of that, I think, is based on inflation. And so I think that warrants a larger conversation about what inflation is. And some of the fucked up things that we're seeing today, I mean, some economists are saying that the threat of inflation is greater now than it's ever been.
Today, even after all the other inflation.
Well, the thing is, I mean, when, the entire global economy is trading based on a U.S. dollar standard, that's the standard, currency that is basically,
Based on nothing.
well, it's fiat currency, right? It's not backed by
Faith
gold
of the
anymore.
United States.
But I mean, back, in the 70s and 80s is where it started to go down. I mean, we used to be, after World War II, up until then, the wealthiest nation on earth. And indeed, there was a time that up until then that we had budget surpluses or very small budget deficits. But what we're seeing now is that our budget deficit, and again, some people will say that budget deficits don't matter. But our deficit, our federal, economic deficit is more than most of the other Western nations, and I don't know the statistic, but most of the other Western nations combined. So just look at how we flip-flopped.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a budget deficit like that, you don't have a very good means of combating inflation. And when the U.S. dollar is declining in value because inflation is going up, we're essentially exporting inflation across the globe. So other economies globally are experiencing inflation. And that's, those people don't like it either. I mean, the citizens of those countries are suffering just like the citizens of our countries are suffering. Inflation, I mean, we have to find ways to combat it.
Well, it doesn't help that we're kind of slaves to the Federal Reserve, and them charging us interest to print currency, which of course is not in the Constitution. The Treasury has the right to print currency, but we've ceded that over to the Federal Reserve. So they use that as a club to basically control what we do, and that's been ruling us since the early 1900s.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned the 1900s. This kind of gets into a conversation about the consumer price index and essentially the buying power of a dollar over time from about 1900 up until the early 1800 and up until the early 1900s. We saw a fluctuation in buying power, and that's a normal consequence of a free market economy. Prices should lower in a capitalist system because of the competition, as well as companies finding ways to manufacture goods and services more efficiently. But what's happened is now we're seeing inflation rising and it's not dropping. And part of that is due to, and there's a myriad of factors, right? But for instance, the Federal Reserve says that it's healthy to have 2% inflation year over year. And if you don't, essentially your economy is going to collapse.
Really? 2%. And that's what was happening until recently, they're saying?
Yeah, so again, we used to have, the value of a dollar used to ebb and flow. So, and that kind of goes almost hand in hand with the budget deficits we've had, right? But in the last, 70, 80, 90 years, that started to change. And now we're seeing inflation year over year, and there's never any drop in prices. The Federal Open Market Committee, also known as the FOMC, judges that inflation of 2% over the longer run is measured by the annual change in the price index for personal consumption expenditures is most consistent with the Federal Reserve's mandate for maximum employment and price stability. So on the one hand, the Fed suggests that the ability to keep interest rates at a steady level enables them to cut interest rates to spur employment during economic downturns. So essentially, by keeping a 2% interest rate, they keep a crucial tool in their pocket to go and manipulate, economic mechanisms in case, there's an economic downturn. They can spur employment by cutting those interest rates. But they also preach the idea that we need at least 2% inflation in order to keep people buying. They say that if prices continue to drop, which is a normal consequence of a free market economy, then people are going to stop spending money.
Really? If it's a
and
deflation?
they're going to save and wait for lower future prices, and that would cause an economic collapse. And a lot of economists say that's just not the case.
I would
that's
think
what
people would buy more in the
Right.
fearing that it was only a temporary thing and it would jump back
Well,
up.
people like to buy things, right? You know,
Right.
in a free market economy. So, I mean, if they have money, you know, even if the future prospect is that there's going to be lower prices, if they're low enough now and they continue to drop, well, people are just going to buy. There's nothing to say that people are just going to save and not spend any money, and that's just going to cause the economy to collapse.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that they argue that price drops would cause people to save. I would think that, you know, recessions and things like that would be more apt to cause people to save. But
Yeah.
okay.
No, that's not true.
I don't know. A lot of these economists these days, I don't really, I don't know what they're on, but I think they're smoking
They have
something.
interesting theories.
Well, so I mean, I talked a little bit about the consumer price index, you know, and you know that's essentially the price of goods, you know, calculated over time. What's interesting is that they've instituted, I think in the 1980s. I thought I had a statistic on when this was introduced, but there's an economic term called hedonics. And with the advent of hedonics, they have statisticians, you know, mathematical minded people, like, you know, probably a very difficult degree, almost akin to like an actuary. They're subjectively now deciding the optimal price of a standard item used for calculation of the consumer price index based on several factors like geography, environment, quality, and then they adjust it. So that's opposed to what they used to do to calculate CPI based on the observable price of an item without that subjectivity. So, for instance, and just for an example of what that means, there's an economist who's out there on YouTube quite a bit. His name's Peter Schiff. And I think he even did a small stint in Congress for a while. But he did an experiment, so to speak, in 2013 where he looked at consumer price index in 2013 and then over the prior 10 years based on newspapers and magazines. So he looked at 20 of the most widely circulated newspaper and magazines, and the consumer price index rose 30% over that 10 years. But through the wonders of the internet, where you can find the publication price or like the purchase price of a magazine or newspaper right on the cover, he noted that the sale price of these publications over that same time actually rose 130%. So essentially, he says, where did that 100% go? That CPI only rose 30%, but newspapers and magazines rose 130%. It's because they're able to manipulate the statistics used to basically calculate the CPI. And so this is another mechanism for the government, or the Federal Reserve for that matter, central banks, to fudge the numbers to make it look like inflation's not as bad as it is. You know, so it's pulling the wool over people's eyes, because when you have inflation, and this is another thing that he talks about, is that if you look in, you know, if you were to Google inflation and a definition for inflation nowadays, it'll say a rise in prices. But if you look in an old encyclopedia, or even Encyclopedia Britannica, it'll say that it's an expansion of the money supply. And that's essentially the original term for inflation, is an expansion of the money supply. And deflation, of course, is a constriction of it. But when you call inflation expansion of the money supply, there's only one entity or group of entities that you can point to as the root cause for that, and that's
Federal Reserve.
governments. That's governments and the central banks. So by incorporating and coming up with new terms, such as quantitative easing is the new one that's being thrown
Just
around.
throwing money out.
You know, according to Forbes.com, when a central bank decides to use QE, or quantitative easing, it makes large-scale purchases of financial assets like government and corporate bonds, even stocks. This relatively simple decision triggers powerful outcomes the amount of money circulating in an economy increases, which helps lower longer-term interest rates.
Sure.
This lowers the cost of borrowing, which spurs economic growth, but it increases inflation. And so they find new definitions for it, like quantitative easing, in these tools, is an alternative to, say, inflation. And
Sure.
essentially prices for items go up.
Well, the quantitative easing, when I heard that term, I laughed because that was just disguising printing money. They wanted to not call it, we're just going to pump more money out. That's what it was.
But it's just like pumping more money. It doesn't increase actual, people's buying power.
It
no.
decreases buying power.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've been doing that since the housing market crash. But we didn't get a rise in pricing until recently. And the missing part of that equation that people don't want to talk about is the people that control pricing. I mean, yeah, sure, you can blame, they're trying to blame COVID and supply chain, most of which is their own doing because they have fragile supply chains that they created over the last 30 years. But they have monopolies or duopolies, and they control the markets and all these things, so that they have the ability just to raise pricing whenever they want. And Apple has raised prices. All the big players have raised prices, and they're just doing it to get increased profits. And that's about all it's just their decision.
But
to
people
just
accept it, and we'll just pay it.
Yeah, and then they blame or point at the government or whatever. But the Federal Reserve, I think, is really the slave master of the United States.
Yeah, so, and I talked about hedonics and, Peter Schiff's example, but there's, several different components to how CPI or Consumer Price Index is calculated over time. And there's been adjustments almost every 10 years. One interesting development to the way they calculate CPI is came about in 1987. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 1987, the method for estimating the owner's equivalent rent, the OER, owner's equivalent rent, of primary residence index was changed to use a sample of homeowners to estimate the price movement of the shelter service of the owned homes rather than reweight the renter sample. So what this means in simple terms, instead of actually looking at the rental value of a home as a basis for calculating that portion of the CPI, because there's so many different components of calculating that, they look at a whole broad spectrum of goods and things. One of them, and historically one of the biggest ones, was the price of homes and how much their value is. So they calculate the value of a home partially based on how much you could rent it for. So instead of looking at, what they used to do is look at what actual landlords were renting out homes for. Now what they do is they take a subset of homeowners who don't actually rent, and they sample them and they ask them how much they could rent their home for.
What?
So you're taking, and I don't know how they come up with their test group or their survey group, but you're essentially asking people that in some circumstances don't have any experience renting their home to come up with an actual rent estimate for the value of their home.
Doesn't seem very
So
scientific.
basically, just redefining what it's like saying, well, now blue is red, and now look, there's all these red houses. There's more red houses now.
And the takeaway from this is that they've contrived so many different ways to fudge the numbers, because inflation is getting out of control, and essentially they're finding new ways to make it look better than it is. But if inflation keeps, and a lot of economists think that it's not going to get better, it's going to continue to get worse. We're exporting, because of the reliance on the US dollar and the global exchange, that essentially, countries like BRICS, for instance, they're trading amongst themselves, but eventually all these other governments may end up saying, to hell with the US fiat system, the fiat system based on the US dollar, we're going to go back to a gold standard. And if these countries across the world go back to a gold standard, what's that going to do to our economy?
We're screwed because we don't have any more gold.
Well, we usually bomb them when they try that. So Libya, we did that with Libya. Now, China is not so easy.
Just pretty much beat them up and steal their lunch money.
Well, and I think you're on the right track, and I don't know how to make that argument, but this is going to come to a head, and if BRICS, which comprises a quarter of the worldwide GDP, is all of a sudden coming up with new currency exchanges or new base rates for their trade, and they're cutting the U.S. out of it, and we lose our ability to implement sanctions. And if other countries go to a gold standard, and it's not based on the U.S. dollar and the fiat currency system, our economy is going to suffer, and we being this massive empire, it's going to mean world war.
Maybe, or an attempted, it would be tough to go against, nuclear powers. That's the thing that has not happened yet.
Yeah.
Since the last time that this kind of crap happened, the world wars of the early 1900s, the nuclear weapons weren't around yet. So, is that going to keep things a lid on things, or are we going to end up in World War III here? Which kind of bleeds into our whole, in addition to the bank failures, which we can get to as well, the Ukraine drone, whether it's a false flag or whether that's Ukraine, whether that's United States, whether that's, whatever that is.
Whether it actually happened or not.
There's escalated tensions in the situation. And, if they start trying to launch drone attacks on Putin, it's probably not going to be good for them.
No,
yeah,
that won't end well.
and that's the story that we held over for this discussion, right? But if you saw the video of that attack,
Right.
literally 2 drones flew almost directly over the Kremlin and then got shot down.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a hard time believing that Russia would allow drones to get that close to the Kremlin before.
Yeah, I don't think I could fly a drone right over the White House without
So
getting near it.
if that's not a doctored video, because you always got to be
Right.
cognizant that they can doctor anything these days.
They can.
What was it? They let the
Doctor.
drone. They let the drones get close on purpose before shutting it down for
Sure.
a photo op, or to make it seem like worse than it was, or is it a red flag or a false flag?
Putin cam.
I wasn't there, so I can't speak to it. That's my stance on that kind of stuff. Photoshop.
Yeah. I mean, is this going to turn into a massive,
Pissing match.
full on, China, Russia, America, and Europe? Now, what? France has been making overtures of peace towards China and talking about playing well with each other. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, everybody seems to be digging China, and we are kind of the redheaded stepchild of the world.
Well, China's been playing their cards pretty well on the political stage. I mean, notwithstanding, our repeated reports of humanitarian problems in China. I mean, that's always the card that the U.S. plays.
Yeah, well, we admit freely that the other countries out there are pretty bad. Meanwhile, we're helping to keep Julian Assange in solitary confinement in the UK. The UK being our dirty little buddies, helping us commit atrocities against journalism. I think that's hilarious.
But you see the president of China, out there trying to broker peace.
Yes, which makes us look really bad because we are actively fighting against peace.
Yeah.
That's pretty weird. I never thought I'd see the day.
Yeah, so not only are the economic structures aligning in favor of China because we fucked ourselves, but they're also taking on the world leader role, and politically they're reinforcing their economic status with the political moves you would expect a world leader to have. I mean, we're losing our power,
Our soft
and we're
power
not
too.
doing anything about it. We're more concerned, we're more concerned with talking about human rights, especially it's interesting. I just saw a video, and maybe you saw the same video, and I wish we had it right now, but it was a South African leader talking about how on the one hand, the U.S. is coming in saying that we're going to send you humanitarian aid, and you've got to look out for the rights of, your, LGBTQ communities in Africa, where that culture, right or wrong, does not really buy into that. And they're saying on the other side, we have Russia and China coming in saying we can sell you arms and we can help you defend yourself against your enemies.
Well,
And so what do you think they're going to be more receptive to?
well, don't worry. We sent Kamala Harris over there, if you don't remember, to try to sweet talk Africa. And I don't know if you saw this, but some of the stuff they said to her about the United States killing their leaders in the past, it was pretty funny. So America.
And what did she say?
Well, I mean, I don't know if she was there at that specific time, but it was during the visit, and they lambasted us because we have been so hypocritical. We have destroyed. If it's a democracy that doesn't play our game, we have no problems overthrowing it. And if it's a dictator that sucks our dick, then we'll be all friendly with him. So we are not the moral authority. No, neither is China.
No, and like, I mean, the least moral person in this conversation, and he's not really even a part of this conversation, but everybody likes to vilify Donald Trump, and he's not a moral person, and that's why a lot of people hate him. But look, he said at least once, we're not saints either. What was his quote?
No, right. That's what the establishment didn't like about him, because he said things that the leaders aren't supposed to say.
And he also was very vocal about the fact that we've made bad deals, bad trade agreements, and whether you agree with NAFTA or not.
Well, right.
Economists typically agree that there's only two ways out of this inflationary crisis. To turn back the clock and potentially save, the U.S. dollar and the current economic structures we have across the world, is to cut government spending and raise taxes on the citizens.
Well, I would argue that the cut government spending is just another austerity play that the elites want us to fall into, just like Greece. And what we need to do is cut military spending, but we need to increase our domestic infrastructure spending. We have, our country's falling apart, and we need to take all that money we're sending over to overseas and invest it here and rebuild our infrastructure, put rail in. So China, the good thing that China does is they go to these third world countries and they'll build ports. They'll build all this infrastructure for them. And the strings that are attached are nothing as bad as what the World Bank or whatever, the little games we play with countries, which is basically to get them in debt and then, crush them. Yeah, crush them. And this is the big funniness that I see. And China, what's funny about China, this is where I really get a kick out of it. Our countries, our companies shipped the jobs over to China so they could take advantage of the low wages. And now we're crying, hey, they stole our technology, and oh my gosh, people.
Took our jobs.
Took our jobs. And it's like, dude, first of all, the government helped facilitate this.
Yeah.
We had policies in place that helped this. But these companies were chasing their dollars.
Yeah,
they
so
wanted more
low
profit.
prices, and now they don't like the consequences of it.
Yes,
Oh,
and we
boo.
need strategic production move back here, and it needs to be more than just the bare minimum. We have. Did you know that almost none of our antibiotics are made in America now?
Yeah,
Almost all are overseas or Mexico or wherever. So we don't even have a strategic. That's a strategic good. We should be having pharmaceuticals made here. So what is wrong with our society that we were able to just give this away to other countries, and now we're mad that they're kicking our ass at the world stage? I mean, we have no production.
And maybe it's too little too late, but, remember a few months ago, Biden, and I don't know what the plan was, Build Back, maybe, I don't know if it was part of Build Back Better or whatever, but.
That didn't get passed.
Yeah, he was essentially saying, he was pretty vocal about it at the time, that, we are going to invest in America and bring semiconductor manufacture back to the American.
They did pass something about that.
We got to do stuff like that. But you're right, we have to invest internally, but we can't just keep spending at the rate we're doing because of the threat of inflation, right? So on the one hand, we have to invest in our infrastructure, and we have to, find ways to bring more economic power back to the United States, but we're undermining that effort when inflation continues to rise.
Yeah, but
So one thing the Democrats are doing is and this is maybe since the dawn of time, well, not really, but in recent memory, there's always conversations about taxing the rich, and right now there's a lot of talk about we're raising taxes on anybody who makes more than $400,000 a year, and it's interesting because we have to, that's one mechanism to trim the deficit is to raise taxes. But when you raise taxes on the super wealthy, it's such a minority of voters that you don't, and let's be frank, when you're a politician, you care more about your reelection than you do the American people.
The people you're going to attack are the people who are funding your.
Well, that's the problem with our system.
So it's like you can't raise taxes on, across the board because nobody's going to vote you back in office. So let's raise taxes on the super wealthy because essentially we can afford to lose their votes.
Not when they're funded.
Right, they fund you, yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is a lot of those super wealthy people, are part of,
So we'll say we'll do it, but then there's always like some bumps in the road, and it never actually happens.
And it essentially comes down to we need to get better politicians in office.
Well, that's true. But the thing about the deficit, see, we have to keep reminding ourselves, and this is one of the reasons the conspiracy theorists with JFK, et cetera, the interest we pay to the Federal Reserve just to print our own money. And when you cut them out, like JFK tried doing by printing direct from the Treasury, which is still a guaranteed, in the Constitution, that's when they get you. So the fact that when we print money through the Fed, we have an instant debt just by printing that money that we wouldn't have with the Treasury. See, and if people would wake up to that, we would see that the Fed equals indentured servitude. We will never get out of the debt if, as long as we print money through them, we pay debt.
It's never going to go away.
Yeah, it's a myth. It's a magical money machine for all of the bankers. So we've just given bankers like never-ending funds.
The more money they give you, the less it's worth.
Yeah, right.
So one of the big terms, and I don't want to get into a big deep dive into this because there's so many different angles, and I'm not going to profess to be, number one, I don't profess to be an economist, but number two, I don't profess to know a lot about this, but it's something that the Fed came up with, and it's called modern monetary theory, or MMT.
Yes, debts don't matter.
Yeah, well, exactly. And so MMT, you could break it down very simply into maybe 3 bullet points, right? So they say modern monetary theory is an alternative economic theory that suggests the U.S. government can create more money. It claims that because the government is the issuer of money, it can create more since it's no longer backed by gold. And that proponents think that MMT can counter many economic problems, but the counter to that is that opponents fear inflation and increased deficits. And that's where people get into the whole discussion of do deficits matter. But we're going to find out, I believe, deficits do matter. And if we keep on this track, something bad's going to happen.
And I say it's a mixed bag. And deficits never seem to matter as long as we're spending it on the military. But as soon as you want to try to do something like healthcare, then it matters. It matters all of a sudden. And it's like, no, we can't do anything. We're in a debt. So that's what I see.
I mean, we have this ridiculous deficit. Why do countries keep investing in us when we're running such a horrible debt?
Because we got the biggest club.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Right.
We're the world's police. But
Yeah.
what if we lose that world leader status?
Yeah, we'll be fine.
And our stance in the worldwide military community? What if China becomes that worldwide police force?
Well, we've seen this happen with Britain. So let's just look at what happened to Britain. So when we won against Britain the first time, Britain was kind of weakened by that, right? They tried to take us out in 1812, didn't work, but they still maintained a pretty strong power hold until World War I and World War II, and that's really what sealed them as they're now really nothing, right? So what is the event that's going to transform America if it happens anytime soon? What's going to turn us into the next Britain? Where we've already begun losing hold of everything. What's the last war we won? World War II. Everything else has been a big pile of debt and death. That's about it. And we go around blowing people up, sanctioning people, and causing coups, but we don't really have any real victories anymore, right? So I don't know. I don't know what's going to be the big thing, and I think we've got years left of some sort of half middle ground thing, but I don't see an easy way to combat China unless we rebuild our production, which I don't see us doing. Do you?
I think the U.S. is going to need a good ass kicking from another country. It's probably what's going to have to happen in order to change anything. It's going to suck, but
ass kicking which way? War?
I mean, we have a globalist economy right now, and so these multinational corporations, they can send their manufacturing and their production to any country they want, so to speak. And I mean, what's their incentive to build in the United States, where the wages are higher, they have to pay more?
Yeah,
but also, there's talk about just in the U.S. there's places that are uninvestable. I look at New York City and the discussions, Shark Tank, right? And there's that, who's that? Shark Tank, yeah. So there's that guy, Kevin something, the Mr. Wonderful guy, right?
Whatever. What's his name? I don't.
Well, anyway, he's been on, I think he was on Fox News, that makes sense. He might have been on CNN too, I don't know. But basically they're grilling him, and he's like, look, we won't do business in New York anymore because, there's so much regulation, and it's not in our best interest? Like when there's all this red tape and all this expense, and both with wages or just the regulations.
Well, they're corrupt too.
I mean, these corporations are going to go and outsource. Like
Well,
it's not a
not
manufacturer. It's not in the corporation's best interest to build in America unless we do something. About
Well, no, it's going to take. We can't look at the private sector to save us because they shafted us. They left They were treasonous and left production to the cheapest place, right? So it would take a major initiative from Congress, which I don't see happening, to basically create state-sponsored investments that then we could hand off to the private sector. So let's take a look at the chip manufacturer. I think I said this on one of the previous episodes. So we did pass some chip, I don't remember what the hell it was called, to incentivize Intel or whoever to build chips here. But here's what they did. At least they did have some good stuff in it. There were clawbacks. If we gave you this money, you couldn't do stock buybacks for like X number of years because stock buybacks are one of the biggest wastes of money. It prevents you from R&D. It does all this bad stuff. So last I heard, Intel was being hesitant about taking that money. Here's what I argued. The private sector has already let us down. We have fallen. We invented the semiconductor, and now we make hardly any of them. And we're not even the top technological. Netherlands or something has the most advanced lithography equipment, and it's restricted from being sold to China, et cetera. But Taiwan gets it, and so we don't even make the most advanced lithography equipment. America, the law that we should have passed, would have created a state. It wouldn't have been necessarily ran by the government. It would have been a state-sponsored, a private, like what am I thinking of? Like not a trust, but like a foundation or something that would then have a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility that Intel could buy from. So they don't want to invest in the technology. We'll supply that. So we spend billions on Ukraine, et cetera. We can go and build a chip fab. And then Intel or AMD or anyone could contract with that facility to make chips. If Intel and shit doesn't want to build their own plant, we build it.
Well, who runs that facility?
It'll be like, I can't remember the damn term, but NPR is it's like a corporation, but it's not in the hands of shareholders and private. It's some sort of public, thing.
Right.
So we could do something like that where we take the bull by the horns because these guys don't want to do it. And then we sell the chip because that AMD doesn't have their own fab. They pay TSMC or whatever. And so we could be like the TSMC of America. We would build our own plant. And then Intel and other chip manufacturers could rent from that, buy supply. And then we just become, we only cover our costs and we pay the employees. And guess what? There we go. The costs will be down because we're not trying to make a profit. We're only selling to Intel or AMD, and then they can mark it up as much as they want.
I think a lot of that, they're looking at the short term. The long term is, okay, that's great if you want to do that. But to build a facility, to get all the machinery, employees, manufacturing, you're looking at 6-7 years minimal before a chip rolls out the doors.
It might be, but that's a strategic good that we should invest in and say, screw it, the private sector let us down. We're going to build this. We're going to own it, and anyone can buy chips from us, but we're owning it because you guys suck.
I think we're just so stuck in a hole and
we are.
going for quick wins to
the
keep our head above
drawback
water.
to that, though, is that it remains to be seen, right? Because number one, traditionally, the theory is that free markets and free enterprise is going to be more efficient than a government-backed, plan like that. So
it didn't happen.
So if we have a state sponsor, which is basically going to be a government-funded manufactory that these corporations can buy from,
It would be self-funded eventually.
if it isn't efficient enough, if they don't produce well enough, what's going to spur these corporations to buy from them?
Well, it would be self-funded by the funds they get selling to. It would only be initially funded by America, but then it would be its own foundation or whatever you call it. I can't think of the term. The producer should help me figure that term out. But the reason we're doing it is because we are now at a strategic disadvantage. Ford could not put trucks together because they didn't have enough chips, et cetera. And Ford doesn't need the most advanced chips. Like, we could create a really low-cost facility to create the kinds of chips that go into automobiles. But at the high end, we even lost that. So if Intel isn't going to do it, they've already lost that claim that the private sector is better. So America can come in and fund the facility. And the reason it would be better, when Intel started really taking a shit, is when the CEO was replaced by a guy that was not actually an engineer. The guy previous who really let them fall behind was some sort of, I don't even know what his background was, but they put him in charge. And guess what? The company took a shit because he didn't know actually engineering. He didn't care about engineering, he cared about marketing. And that's what happens.
But, now we're saying, okay, have the government step in, fund this plant that eventually will be private owned. So where's the government going to get this money?
We have money. We're giving it to Ukraine, man. We got it all over.
We're taking it from the Federal Reserve, and now we're just
Well, right, but we're doing it today on military. So let's do it for something good.
Yeah, so let's stop giving all this billions of dollars every week to Ukraine.
Well, that would be very nice. It's not going to happen. It's going to be in addition to if it would happen, and it just you're kind of just going around in circles.
And it does have like a very New Deal type vibe to it, where like you have the added advantage that you're creating jobs.
You're right, exactly, and that would be self-funded eventually. Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, we got to do something like that because the private sector has let us down too many times. And eventually we'll lose all of our car manufacturing, and then what'll happen? Oh, we need someone to build a plant. Please help us. I mean, we've got the ability to do this. We've done this before.
Yeah, and I think it's going to take out of the box thinking like that to right the ship.
Well, here's
a
fun
jacked
fact.
Up that it's going to take years and a lot of
Here's a fun fact.
Bite the bullet to make it corrected.
Here's a fun fact for your historians. Early 1900s, was it pre-World War I? Russia was the China. We were sending factories over to Russia. We were actually disassembling factories and shipping them to Russia to be assembled there, and they were taking our jobs. And then the war happened, and they all stopped. And then we became they became communists, and we became anti-whatever. So just so you know that we actually did do this earlier. We were shipping them to Russia instead of China. Now it's China.
Well, it's interesting, and this is way off topic, but in World War II, with what was it called? Was it Barbarossa? I mean, that was obviously the name of it.
Invading Russia.
Yeah. So when Nazi Germany declared war on Russia, and then they had the Blitzkrieg on Russia, Russia disassembled many of their factories and shipped them westward. And they were able, they did.
Or east? Away from?
Or east, excuse me. Yeah, eastward.
Interesting.
So they were able to do that. They weren't able to do that to every factory, of course, but they did disassemble a lot of factories and ship them east.
They're an engineering
Marvel of engineering.
Yes, they're
Marvel of modern engineering.
But
they're very creative.
So we didn't even talk about the banks here.
Yes, banks.
Yeah, so as of Thursday, May 4th.
More bank failures.
Yeah, so we had two more regional banks that were suspended. That was the Los Angeles-based PacWest and Arizona's Western Alliance.
Uh-oh. How many more do you think are going to fall?
And what's interesting is that, and we talked about this before, but when these banks are being suspended or failing, they're being essentially ceded to J.P. Morgan Chase.
Right. Yeah, they're just being like, hey, you guys want to buy this? What? I'm thinking to myself, like, was this just a unilateral decision? What's going on here? Now, there's an argument to be had that that the United States should nationalize the failed bank, fire all the officers, replace them with people that actually know what they're doing, recapitalize it, and sell it back to the private market. I heard that plan, and I don't understand why we're not doing that instead of giving it to another bank that's too big to fail.
Well, the only thing I can think of is that it's a way to regulate these smaller banks that are suffering because, and the thing is, like, and I think it was The Guardian, the European banks aren't failing. And it's because there's more regulation over the European banks.
We just loosened our regs in the Trump years. We loosened a reg that we gave during Obama's years. And so a lot of these banks are not being tested at the level they should have been.
Well, typically deregulation is good for free markets.
That's what they say.
Wow.
But so when these are failing because of lack of regulation, I mean, there's a happy medium, right? So it's almost like if you see them in the JPMC, it's like a quasi-regulation without regulating because you're not going to ruin, investor confidence, things like that by doing that. But, you're essentially creating a monopoly.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We're just going to be into one massive bank failure.
you're creating a measure of oversight here. That it could have other economic consequences for the Fed.
It's a snowball, man. It's just like Clerks.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, about these bank failures, if it continues to happen, the prevailing theory is that the Fed is going to be forced to cut interest rates.
Yeah, well,
No, they won't.
What's crazy is that if the Fed cuts interest rates at a time that they're raising them, because remember that raising interest rates is their traditional mechanism to control inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Inflation is going to skyrocket even more.
in theory.
And final parting comment, why is inflation so bad other than potentially the U.S. dollar losing its status on the world stage and us suffering a major economic collapse?
Why is that so bad?
Yeah, well, okay, fine. But inflation is essentially a hidden tax, right? So, like, when you expand the money supply, your buying power goes down. Who does that hit? It hits the middle class and the working poor.
Correct.
We're paying more, and, people can't afford a house nowadays. Like, back in the old days, you could have two very low-paying jobs, and two people in a nuclear family could afford a house, a decent house. People making lots of money now in some places can't afford to buy a house. It's just outrageous.
Right, and that's a whole other thing we need to get into is the private equity buying up all the houses and rentals. Oh my gosh, and we need to have someone on for the Federal Reserve and talk about how we get rid of this evil institution that Satan has given us.
But look at the rich though. So the wealthy, it doesn't hit the wealthy as much because they take loans out so they can buy assets that are income generating.
They buy a lot of assets.
So they're generating income, but their debt loses value. So they're actually making money when inflation goes up. So you see what happens is inflation makes the wealthy richer, and it makes the poor poorer.
And the deflation also helps the rich.
So as
the rich always come up with aces.
As inflation continues to rise, we'll see the wage gap and the income inequality get even worse. God help us all.
And this is
I've got news for you. You are mine now. You belong to me.
And this is Saturday, May 6th, 2023. Packets and bolts. Ooh, boy, this was a topic that was deep.
That's what happens when we skip a couple months.
And remember to keep packing those bolts. Email the show, packetsandbolts@gmail.com, packetsandbolts@gmail.com, Mastodon, Discord. Find us. Till next time. See ya. Real goat.